Hello everyone. My name is Syifa Andini. I am a student from the University of Widyagama Mahakam Samarinda. I am making this video to complete my assignment on the subject of public speaking. This assignment requires me to find and read a book that is around 100 pages and then make a video like this to discuss the book's plot and give my personal opinion on the book. So let's just get started. You see, the book that I've chosen for my assignment is called Of Red of Mice and Men, which is a really old book that was released around 1937, I think, by the author John Steinbeck. The story mainly follows George and Lenny, who at the opening of the story are on their way to their new workplace after they've been chased out of the last one they got. The early character interaction that we got between them laid groundwork for their character and how they act to us, the readers. George is the logical one and the self-appointed leader of the two, while Lenny is the follower and is noticeably big and not the brightest. From their conversation, we know that the reason why they were chased out of their previous job was because Lenny grabbed a woman's dress not out of malicious intent, but because the fabric is soft and he wanted to feel it. This, of course, scared the woman who screamed at him, yet it didn't make Lenny let go. It made him grip the dress tighter in panic. Until George has to come in and pull his friend away from the woman. The woman, upset, accuses Lenny of trying to rape her even though his action came out of innocent curiosity. This caused the two of them to leave the country to try and find a new job. Lenny even doesn't remember why they were fired in the first place. While George is of course well aware and is very pissed about it. Lenny doesn't even have a mean bone to him, just unaware of his own strength, which can be seen where he kept a dead mice in his pocket that he accidentally killed by petting it too hard. George then laments the fact that if Lenny wasn't in his life, he could have lived good, making money without trouble and spending them away in a bar and getting wasted, because he doesn't need to worry about Lenny going off and causing problem if he took his eyes off of him. This, of course, upsets Lenny to the point that he offered to just leave George alone and live in a cave somewhere, which make George backtrack on his word. The two then talk about their dream of owning a piece of land with a barn and a farm. Lenny is noticeably excited about tending the rabbits, which is the only thing he seems to remember clearly. Before they set up to go to their new workplace, George warned Lenny to not stir up trouble, and if he did, to hide in the bushes in the area where they previously rested until George came so they can run away again, like they did before. George tells the bigger man to repeat it and let him handle talking to the other people in their new workplace. As they arrive, they quickly get acquainted with the people they would work with and what they would be doing. George grills that what he warned Lenny about to his head so he doesn't forget, because all they need is to save up money so they can get their dream. Another character is introduced here, an old man named Candy who is what is noticeably about him is his old dog. The old dog the old dog that Candy has is noticeably very smelly because from what the other character said that Candy has the dog since forever since the dog was a little pup and the dog has grown old, blind and deaf and can't even walk straight. And everybody is tired of the dog because everywhere Candy goes the dog comes with him and the dog always leaves such a horrendous smell. Anyways, Candy warned them of Curly and his wife. Curly is the boss son and is a bit mean or a prick. Since he likes to rile up big guys like Lenny, probably because he's insecure about his height, and won't be punished because of nepotism. Curly's wife, meanwhile, is troubled because she goes around wandering and trying to talk to the guys, which is bad because Curly is easily jealous. So George, after hearing this, immediately tells Lenny to steer clear out of the husband and wife's path, telling him to just let Curly swing at him and not fight back, and also avoid Curly's wife like a plague. After they went to eat and get to work, next we read about George hanging out with one of the higher ups, Slim, where he confessed that he used to pull pranks on Lenny a lot as a kid because it was so easy. He stopped because one of those pranks almost killed Lenny on accident, and Lenny probably doesn't even remember it. On the other hand, a worker convinced Candy to let him shoot the old dog dead, explaining that the dog is blind, deaf, and has no teeth, and couldn't even walk without pain. So he's putting it out of his misery. Candy, after arguing back and forth, Candy finally relents, letting his old companion be guided outside to be killed, while Slim offers him a puppy from his famous dog newborn litter. After that, Slim leaves to take care of his horse before Curly asks before Curly arrives to the barn and asks the boys if they know where his wife is. Which of course the remaining men who stayed at the barn said they don't know where she went. Hearing their answer, Curly then rushes off, trying to find his wife. George and Linny begin talking about their dream with Candy listening in. Candy, after hearing what they wanted to do, then offered to give them his save of money for the land if they were to take him with them. George agreed, while Linny only cared about tending the rabbits. So the three of them comes to an agreement, with George telling Candy to swear not to tell anyone about this. Curly then returned with Slim, who is angry that Curly accused him of trying to get close to his wife. Well, after a bit of arguing, Curly then sets his eyes on Linny, trying to rile the big guy up, getting in his face and repeatedly attacking him. Linny begged George to get Curly away from him, while George finally tells Linny to attack back since he's tired of Curly's attitude. Linny then crushed Curly's hand, making him back up. Slim then told Curly to cover up the reason for his injuries, and then they bring Curly to town to see a doctor, leaving Linny and Candy in the location. Linny, Linny then wandered to Crook's place, who is very displeased about him being there, yet he can't deny the crushing loneliness he feels, so he reluctantly let Linny in his space. Crook's a black man, and the treatment of people of color back then was horrendous. So expect a few people treating Crooks but very unkindly in this story, unfortunately. So Crooks began talking to Linny even going so far to imply to him that George would leave him, which Linny firmly denies, saying that George isn't like that. Candy then burst in, talking about how they could profit off their future rabbits. This, of course, caught Crook's attention. It gave him a bit of hope of getting out of this shabby job and and leaving the mistreatment that he faces here. This is when Curly's wife appeared. She asked them what they were doing here with Crooks, out of all people, before asking them about Curly. Candy, of course, tries to win with the cover up they came up with, but of course she doesn't believe them since she sees that Clinny has bruises and the only person who could do that is her husband. They went a bit back and forth, which caused her to insult their goal of trying to get enough money for their own land and quitting the job, saying it's not gonna work, which caused Crooks to get pissed at her. She immediately began threatening Crooks into silence because, again, it was a very different time back then and racism was very prevalent. Candy tried to defend Crooks and tells her to get lost, that no one wants her here since she only causes problems for them. Later on, the others that went into town came back and Crooks informed the others to just forget about his plan of joining them in their quest to buy their own land. Linny and Candy didn't think much about it as they leave Crooks to stew in his own thoughts. Later on, Linny is in the barn petting a pup, but he accidentally killed it, which caused him to be upset since George said if he causes problem, he won't let Linny attend the rabbits. Curly's wife arrived and began talking to Linny. She began to let out her frustration on how her life became, how she had so many opportunities to live a wealthy and fulfilling life, yet was held back by her family, and now she's stuck with marrying a man she doesn't like, which is Curly. Lenny, of course, didn't retain what she was saying because as we take note from the previous interaction, he's not really the brightest. Uh, yeah. So of course, this causes Curly's wife to be upset, but she kept talking to him since she was also lonely. They began discussing about soft things, which Lenny really likes. Curly's wife then offered to let him feel through her hair, which became a mistake that cost her life. Because just like the woman's dress, Linny didn't let go when Curly's wife screams at him to let her hat go. With this, but course, because the two are panicking and Linny doesn't understand that he's clearly Curly, but really making Curly's wife afraid, he accidentally squeezed her head tight and broke her neck. After accidentally killing her, Linny, of course, doesn't know what to do because he just killed her. And so he remembered what George said, which is to hide in the bushes on the place where they rested before coming to to their new workplace. So he went up to the forest to hide in the bushes, like his friend instructed him to do. A few time passed by, and then Candy found Curly's wife's dead body and began panicking as George walked into the scene in time. George told Candy to calm down and let the others know of the corpse later, as he plans to return to the quarter building to make sure the others don't suspect him in the murder, because the only person who can snap a neck so effortlessly is Linny. As George left, Candy begins cursing at Curly's wife's dead body since he views it as her ruining his hope of getting out of this stale life. As the other men are informed of Curly's wife's death, Curly is of course enraged and demanded that he should be the one that kills Linny for murdering his wife. Yet strangely, a gun from a worker mysteriously went missing, which they all chalk up to Linny stealing it. They then convince Curly to stay at his wife's corpse. Slim then talked to George saying that he knows that Linny didn't mean to kill the woman, yet George asks if they can just, not kill his friend. Slim then explained to George that the alternative is either Linny dies with a gun or he is locked up in the cage like an animal. After hearing that, George went ahead to where he knows where Linny is hiding. He coaxed Linny to look at the sky as they begin talking about their shit dream. While doing so, George pulled out the gun he stole and aimed it at his friend's head. He forced his hand to stay still and pulled the trigger. So yeah, that was a very interesting story. After reading the book, all I can say is that I just felt really bad for all the characters involved in this story, except Carly. Who, apa tuh? I mean, yeah, he lost his wife, but like, come on, he was he's a jerk. Okay, it was really a weird experience for me looking at how things were in the past through this book. The ending was tragic. I mean, yeah, because all from the beginning to the end of the book, all we know about this character is that their dream is really what they are striving for, and they didn't even get it at the end, which I guess kind of grounded this story in reality, since not all dreams and aspirations can be reached. Life just doesn't go the way we want at times. I think I'd recommend this book to my friends for the reason of, since this is an old book, they could learn a few new vocabularies from it. It's around 100 pages, so it won't be a very long read, especially for those who are trying to get used to reading long texts filled with English. And my last reason is to peek into how different the world is in back then. This book this book takes place in the 1930s, which was a very very different time from where we are now, which I hope can be an interesting experience for my friends or for people who read this book to see how life was back then. And that's all from me. Goodbye.